Okay. Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. I know this is a crazy, weird little thing, and you guys are being a bit of our guinea pigs to give it a go for the first time. But we've got this Sup With Me Tonight series that we're looking at doing. And you know what? I've been going a little bit crazy, and the company's been going a little bit crazy. And one of the things that we wanted to do was connect with people and share some sort of human thoughts about where we're all at right now. So we don't have a huge agenda. I've got a few curiosities that I might present, but basically the idea was we wanted to gather in a comfy place where we're all happy and healthy, I hope, in our own homes, and grab ourselves a little bit of comfort food and have a chat. So we've got with us today Kent Allen, one of our Saskatoon actors. We've got Yvette Nolan, one of our Saskatoon and Canadian, list goes on, playwrights, dramaturgs, directors, theater rat, I believe is Yvette's favorite term, which I steal on a regular basis. And then we've got Lue Douthit, who a lot of our Shakespeare on Saskatchewan folks might not know. And that was kind of the part of what we wanted to do. This was kind of giving me and giving ourselves a chance to connect. So we wanted to have some folks on the call who, you know, Shakespeare on Saskatchewan has a longer relationship with, like Kent Allen, and Yvette Nolan, who's come back to Saskatoon to live in the last, what, about 5 years of that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And has had some great time with us in the last couple of years, doing some artist in residence things, having coffee with me things, and giving me a place to vent things, and all those great, wonderful things over the last couple of years. And then Louie, who runs Play On Shakespeare down in the States. And we wanted to start off with this one in particular because one of the great gifts that Yvette gave myself and Shakespeare on Saskatchewan is a connection of being introduced to Louie and introduced to some of the work that Louie is doing down in the US, as well as in Canada and internationally as well. And those connections are what this all is all about. So thank you all very kindly for joining me. As I said, we all grabbed ourselves a nice little snack. So this is one of those things where you're more than welcome to eat with your mouth full. Depending on how much time we get, we can chat about what we all brought for our comfort foods. Mine happens to be, I know the entire internet is currently obsessed with sourdough bread, so I don't claim this to be original whatsoever. That Jamie, my partner, has been mastering sourdough bread in our household, but I can guarantee that the world over that my partner makes better sourdough bread than everybody else on the internet who has mastered it. And look at this thing.
That is beautiful.
She actually sent me to the store today to get a scalpel so that she could make more pretty things the next time, because this one apparently wasn't good enough. No. So maybe I'll start off with the conversation. Today would have been our first day of rehearsals for the Tempest and Mackers. And Yvette, you'll notice that I'm not saying the full title because everybody is telling me that COVID-19 exists because I broke all the superstitions. So I have folded to peer pressure, and I'm not saying the title anymore. But so, you know, there's been a great loss for us at Shakespeare on Saskatchewan, as well as so many people around the world for what would have been, you know, the gathering of our community today. And, you know, beyond that, I got to admit, I'm not having a whole lot of luck finding much to place my hope in the world today. It's a sad day for me, and just in terms of the first day of rehearsal for sure. But as I'm sure is the case for you and so many other people out there, it's an ugly place, and you know, it's not like the ugliness that we're all watching in the news is a new thing, but you know, it's certainly forefront, and we're seeing it in a variety of ways. And my 5-year-old son may or may not jump onto my lap at any given moment. We'll see how it goes. Although he has a fear of Zoom, just like the rest of us that do, so he probably won't. So I honestly myself don't have an answer for this because I am finding trouble having a little hope today. But what's giving any of you hope in the world today? And we have the 21-second Trudeau
That's
policy.
right. We have.
One has to think. I mean, it's difficult to. I mean, with COVID, there are so many other issues, old and new, that are at the forefront of perhaps a changing society. I suppose the greatest hope is that we're learning something from all of this and can actually come back to a better place than we left when this COVID thing started.
Yeah, it's so hard, Will. Like, it's so hard. I mean, when we started talking about doing this up with me, we were even then in a different place, like even then able to be more hopeful, right? And just in the last weekend, it's been really, really dark. Looking for what is hopeful. I think maybe like, you know, the Metropolitan Opera's been broadcasting operas, but they're not today. So like there's that kind of solidarity. I think where people with power are making stands in order to, you know, show solidarity with people without power. And that is hopeful. I don't know how we're going to change. I don't know, you know, like, you know, when sorrows come, they come not single spies, but in battalions. Like, it just, I don't know. Yeah, over to you, Louie.
Yeah, thank you all very much. Listen, I obviously must be a hopeful person. I came to visit you all in December, so I just want that publicly stated. Joyfully came to visit you in December. I don't know. It's I've been thinking about just hope, not necessarily having it or where I get it, but it does seem to be sort of a human. One hopes is part of the hopes, part of the human condition, and that when you don't have hope, then I think that that's a big pet problem, and things are bleak. There's no doubt about it. I have a 93-year-old mother who's in assisted living and doesn't quite understand what's going on in the world. And she still wants to live. And I find that hopeful in a weird way, right? Like the will to survive is a hopeful thing. So that's kind of where I'm at. It is a bleak day, certainly down here in the States, with what's going on top of everything else.
What's it like where you are, Louie?
Well, literally where I'm at, it couldn't be a more gorgeous day in Ashland, Oregon, right? So I have the privilege of being in this tiny little beautiful town, and participated in a sweet protest march on Monday, maybe? Is today just, or Sunday? Maybe it was Sunday. Who knows what day it is? I don't know. I can't keep track, right? But obviously we certainly see a lot, and like everyone, I suppose, and hear a lot, and being on any of the social media, as Yvette has already alluded, everybody has really made a solid statement for at least today about pausing, you know. Maybe that's what it will take to go forward. I don't know.
And what do you have to eat?
Oh, well, I'm Welsh, so anything baked good is going to be the thing, right? And I just happened to bake a scone for the first time ever, so I'm going to show off my scone that I actually baked the other day.
Wow.
And I saved it just for today, but I'm most happy about what I'm drinking in honor of you all. It's a company in Ashland called For Bitter or Worse, and it's called the Saskatoon, which is based on the Saskatoon berry, which I did not get to discover in December when I was visiting you all, but discovered it at my local little snotty market, one of those kind of fancy markets. I don't drink, so finding non-alcoholic beverages that don't kind of drive you crazy after 2 sips is very much a challenge, but it's nice and bitter. And so I put a little tonic water in it. And so that's my beverage.
Wow, nice.
It actually helps me picture the sunny day in Ashland. I think that drink probably kind of sums it up, doesn't it?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Right. So
Kent, what are you having?
Well, 5 o'clock is, I have a great breakfast and I have a very nice lunch. And then after that, it's catch as catch can. 5 o'clock is usually pre-show, pre-run, pre-training. So I just have a bowl of dried fruit and nuts. There it is. And a glass of Wawa. And there that is. And that's what I'm partaking of at the moment.
And then will you go out into your beautiful, I don't know the right word for it, but the pergola that you built specifically for karate training and things after that?
Yes, the little dojo space, I will go there after my run. So I'll do a run and then do some training.
I'm going to do the same. I'm going to be training and running, and I'm going to do some cycling and some swimming as well. Actually, here's what's almost guaranteed to happen is that when I'm done this, Liam, my 5-year-old, will grab 2 pairs of binoculars and the dog and the cat and me and take us on an adventure. That's what'll actually happen.
That's cool.
Yvette, what's on your plate there?
Okay, I'm exactly the opposite of Kent, so it's probably good that we're not going into rehearsal today. Actually Philip and I made, but mostly Philip, made a little Tempest feast in honor of the day. So what I have is fish. Actually, they're shrimps that have been skewered and then done on the barbecue. They're not very shrimpy shrimps. They're kind of massive shrimps, but that's what happens on a magical island. And because it is a Mediterranean island, a little bocconcini and tomatoes and basil salad, because that's a Mediterranean kind of thing. And then the other thing that Caliban talks about all the time is like berries. And I was like, that's a good salad. What kind of berries go with shrimp or fish? And so we went with blackberries, and Philip made a blackberry cobbler. So it's fish and berries, kind of all sexed up. And a glass of wine because, in honor of Trinculo and Stefano, much wine. So I'm having an entire Tempest feast. No nuts and berries, which is, I suppose, what Prospero lives on. I'm having what the nymphs put out.
That is incredibly impressively well thought out.
Yeah, Fish and Berries sounds like an English legal firm somehow.
Yeah, it's not actually even a good enough name for an English pub.
Yeah.
No, there has to be an instrument and an animal.
Right. Okay, so here's a question for you all, and it's a Shakespeare one, but also one that I often ponder more and more as the years go by, and ponder a lot today, and in the world we live in. Honestly, are there Shakespeare plays that we should take out of the production cycle because of their racial content, or misogynistic content for that matter, or those kinds of things? Should we be doing Shrew and on down the line? I mean, you can go through various plays and find various misogyny or racialist agenda. Are there Shakespeare plays that we should just stop doing?
I think we have to stop doing Shrew. I cannot see a way to make it work. I mean, if we did it with, with her in an orange jumpsuit and a bag over her head, maybe we could do it. But I don't know that that's exactly serving the purpose of theater, which is to edify, right? I have not been able to find a way or a production that can justify Shrew.
Well, you know, I believe that over the 400 years, plays have gone in and out of favor. And I guess I believe it's because that at some points they just either didn't make sense or were just too egregious against, you know, where people's minds and hearts were, right? So I find it an interesting challenge for Shakespeare theaters about, you know, which plays to produce kind of thing, right? And you have to make a commitment about, well, we're going to do the whole thing. And you're not sure why always. And I think that there were some plays in his lifetime, and I believe that Simon of Athens that was never produced, or at least there's no record of it being produced in his lifetime. Having worked on it, I think maybe it's because it was even too dark for our times, but it's also a pretty good, it's a pretty good metaphor for our times too. So maybe that one ought to be. Listen, I've got another way of looking at this too, and that is too much with the popular plays. I kind of would like a moratorium on Midsummer for a little while, to be honest. I think it'd be really fun to encourage us to look at some of these other plays. We just did this whole series where we read 10 plays, and you know, that King John was unbelievably powerful. And I always try to argue for that in a presidential election year, along with Coriolanus, you know. And so I think there are cycles of things in which the plays go through as well.
Kent?
Yeah, I don't think Taming of the Shrew, certainly don't sit beside my daughter during that play. She just won't have any of it. So yeah, I think we have to really consider that piece as perhaps setting aside.
What about Merchant?
Boy, I would have to say yes, but I know that there may be some good arguments for keeping it, but again, it steps into a minefield, and I'm not sure that if that becomes the value of what we're doing, then it's not worth it.
Yeah, I think that it can be very difficult to rise, I don't want to say above or around what hits one in the face and what your, you know, initial response is, kind of like your daughter can, right?
Mm-hmm.
But actually there are interesting things in Shrew and Othello and Merchant and Titus that are worth exploring in our society, because all of the things that happen in those plays are happening right now. The question, I think, is like, at what cost do we do those productions, right? For us as performer, you know, U.S. performer, I think the cost of doing that is something to consider. And also, no matter how poignant or pointed or clear, or we may never get an audience to go on, actually take it at face value. Or even better, use it as the metaphor that I think it really was, the reflection back, and be willing to actually say, yeah, I'm part of that. You know, I made that, I'm part of that. As part of this society, I made that, right? You know, and who knows if that's how they really were used 400 years ago, but that's how we use plays today. So I think having these conversations are really important, because you're asking for a public trust to a certain degree, right? To come in and have an experience, and how you modulate or, you know, meet the expectations of that experience and exceed them, which of course I think would be like the greatest outcome of all. It just may be so much more work, you know? Right.
And isn't there an easier way to get there? Like, don't we have other tools in the kit to use to get an audience to move along, instead of, I think we don't need, at this stage of the game, we don't need to inflame people in that way. We need to fire them up in another way. And I just don't know, like, the amount of work that goes into, I mean, I saw a Merchant in Toronto with Janny Lozon, who's an Indigenous actor, in the role of Shylock. And it changes it.
Yeah.
But there's a weird sort of doubling thing that goes on when you make her an Indigenous woman instead of a Jewish man.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it both brings you closer, but also distances you at the same time. So people were allowed, because Indigenous folks are like already, it's like, yeah, you're oppressed. We know colonization. So there's already a thing there that people can feel kind of superior or smug about,
Right.
and not have to actually face the anti-Semitism of
Right.
the piece.
Actually get to it. Yeah. And this we just may not be able to do that right now with some of them, and maybe never. Who knows? But
Well, and we just in terms of the not the cycle, but how things feel differently at different times. I mean, we had the Tempest and Mackers set up for this year, and we'd been well down the track of creating the shows that we were creating. And Yvette and I, we'd had our basic approaches and all those kinds of things set. And when we canceled the season, made the choice to hang on to these two pieces and move them forward into next year, mostly on the basis that we felt like the artistic work that had been done to date and what had been the soul that people had poured into it needed to be respected and hung on to. And at the time, I didn't put a whole lot of thought into how much we would redo the shows or reapproach the shows or those kinds of things, because there just wasn't time to think about that. But as the weeks have already gone by, and as the months that come go by, I get more and more confused about how we'll ever manage to re-enter those two pieces. I mean, certainly as directors of that, but as performers as well, Kent, how much are we going to have to re-enter them and go, well, this is a completely different world than we were in when we thought of them 2 years ago. Should we start from scratch, or are we picking up from where we left off? It's, I think it's going to be a really interesting process. I love working on pieces for really extended periods of time, or more specifically, I love not working on pieces for extended periods of time. I like to work on them and then let them rest and see what the back of my head does. And this is going to be an opportunity where that happens, where a whole production basically just gets put on pause and we go, no, we'll come back in a year and see what we think. And I can't decide whether I'm looking forward to that or terrified of that.
Well, Tempest, I think, is a one-word summation of sort of the world we are dealing with at the moment, and
Yeah.
How apropos is that? So, and sort of the mysticism involved in Mackers is, there are elements of those plays that I think are very close to the world experience at the moment. So I think they're sort of hand in glove with the events as we're seeing them unfold
In this moment, right? But
Yeah.
I'm also like I'm looking, we don't go back to these plays until after November. So I'm like, Caesar, Richard, too bad you just did Richard. Like I'm just, it's like, what is the world going to be like? We don't even know what it's going to be like in 2 weeks. We don't know what, like, do we do a Civil War Shakespeare? Because that's where we are at in a year. Yeah, it's hard. I'm like you, Will. I feel like I've had to put down the piece and not think how it lives in this world, because I don't know what this world is right now.
Yeah.
And are you saying more theatrically or more literarily, for lack of a better word? I mean, the play or the production that coming back to concerns you more?
I think the production, you know, we took whatever track we each took with our design teams and collaborators to choose what we're going to heighten and what we're not going to heighten in these scripts, based on a world that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, right, right. And
Yeah.
who knows who can be a part of those productions next year anyway,
Yeah.
too, right? I mean, we have no idea what's going to happen to any of us. I mean, yes, and I mean, I guess I'll just say that there are many reasons why these plays continue to delight us 400 years later, and one of them is, I'm telling you, they're always freaking relevant. There's something in it, it doesn't matter. Like, yes, and your observation is like brilliant, right on. And next year, those plays will still have something in them that seems to matter. So it really is kind of this beautiful combo of in the moment theatricality, responding in the moment theatrically with this interesting sort of table that had been set 200 years ago. We just read Hamlet like 2 days ago, or whenever it was, and it was like, well, I don't know how that's going to have any necessary direct. I mean, and I thought, oh my God, things just popped all the way through it. You know, suddenly everything had relevance. Like, isn't it great? I think that may be always true about them.
Okay, here's an easier one. We'll start with Yvette, and the rest of you will get a second to think about it. What's the first Shakespeare piece you remember doing, and what's the sort of first strongest memory or sensation that you remember about that experience?
Of doing, or the one that changed my life?
Of doing.
Of doing. Oh my God. We did the first Shakespeare in Winnipeg, Shakespeare in the Park in Winnipeg, when I was just an egg, and we didn't do a full piece. We did a bunch of curated pieces from a lot of the pieces, and so for 2 weeks we all just worked on all of the text, and we didn't know what we were cast as, and then he cast us in things. So it was like As You Like It, it was The Dream, it was Dream, of course. It was a bunch of bits that we got to do, and that changed my life because I had to learn everything. And then in the third week, just the week before we went up, it's like, okay, you're playing Hermia, and you're playing Rosalind, and you're playing, you know, like we got assigned our parts, but it was a bit original practices in that way. Like you just learned everything so that you knew the text and you know what was going on. That changed everything for me. So it was a bunch of them. It was like a smorgasbord of Shakespeare bits.
Yeah, but it's a different engagement with it. Yeah. Louis?
Is the question about the first or the well, I'm not sure
I was suggesting first, but you can throw that out the window too.
First that really affected me kind of thing that I worked on?
Yeah.
It might have been Love's Labor's Lost at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. I came to OSF as a new play dramaturg, and it took a long time before I was invited into the Shakespeare rehearsal room. And eventually, I think that the Shakespeare dramaturg at the time just said he couldn't do another production of whatever it was. I don't know, I drew the short straw, the long straw, whatever it was. I got the assignment. It was awesome. It was like, great, you can learn. And I remember sitting in, and this is where I began to discover that deep dive, nerdy, archaeological text dig with the footnotes, and oh my God. Obsessive about all that, capturing all that, and that was really fun. But I remember sitting in rehearsal, and it came to a gnarly moment. I'm sorry, I don't remember what the gnarly moment was. It is Love's Labors. There's a couple of them, and rehearsal stopped, and somebody said, "I have no idea what I'm saying," and everybody kind of looked up, and everybody then went to the various corners and places in the room, got out their own editions. Mine has this footnote, mine has that footnote, mine doesn't have a footnote. And then there was a pause. And somebody then said, Shakespeare is a genius. and we should try to figure it out to reach to him. And I was not a Shakespeare person at that time. Some people would argue I'm still not, and that's okay. But I'll say that I was in the world of theater thinking, oh my goodness, why wouldn't somebody do that to Yvette Nolan? They wouldn't. We couldn't wait for you to get out of the room, Yvette, for us to say, well, if you just fix the second act, it would all be great. And so this Mobius strip of how to treat Shakespeare as new, because so many people came into the room already knowing like what they were going to do, how they were going to be, and I thought that doesn't feel good to me either. But the respect for Shakespeare to new work, and the respect and sort of like the curiosity of new work into Shakespeare, and that set my career at the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. This kind of Mobius strip thing.
Yeah, it's interesting, and there's I've always felt a lot of flaw in the new play development approach that that sums up really, really well. It's interesting. Yeah, Kent.
I guess As You Like It, Globe Theater back in the 70s. I'm a small town guy born in Moose Jaw, you know, growing up in Weyburn. I moved to Regina. Everything was bigger. Working with a large company. It was the first big cast company I'd worked with. The first one of the professional engagements I'd had. And I was just overwhelmed by the size, and by all of the people and the huge mechanisms necessary, at least in my eyes at the time, required to get Shakespeare up and rolling. And it was it really was. It took the wind out of my sails a bit to think that, my God, this is work. I mean, this is a gigantic effort, and it was very impressive for my stubble jumping eyes to see how involved and how massive and how intense the process could be.
Who are you playing?
Oh, I've just as cast, I would carry things and you know, come on with a bow and arrow, and you know, that was about it.
I must admit, I was hoping you were going to say Sylvius, because the one that I was going to mention was also As You Like It, and it was also in Regina. And my sort of main memory of it was first year university, so I was the little kid trying to step up to what everybody else was doing, and really hadn't a bloody clue what was going on, and similarly was amazed by the mechanism, and I remember being very, very amazed by some of the fourth year students who just had a rigor that I had never seen before, that you know, the amount of focus and time and dedication that they actually spent on the language and various things that was a whole new thing to me. So I just remember constantly running to catch up, and enjoying that feeling of constantly running to catch up, because there was something that I was seeing there that I didn't understand, but there was something that I was seeing that I had aspirations to do and to be able to do and to be able to understand, and those kinds of things. And in that one, I played Sylvius. So I was kind of hoping that you also played Sylvius in yours, but not quite.
Yeah, not there yet.
I think the time's passed, Kent.
Yeah.
Not in my
speaking
theater
of
company.
time,
I want to start a theater company, Kent, that is for those of us of a certain age. You have to be of a certain age to join the theater company, and that then I would distribute all the roles accordingly. And I want to go into senior centers with Shakespeare, because I figure we might still be younger than most of the people there. And so I just think it would be a marvelous experience for everyone. There's so much now about complex language, particularly poetry, and how
Right.
the inventive mind it still can absorb that, like with classical music too. And I'm just really interested in going in and just reading some Shakespeare. So
Yeah, great.
I'll get you for my company when I form it.
I'm there. Yeah.
I'll buy the ticket, not the plane ticket, the theater ticket.
It's all going to be by Zoom anyway, Will. I mean,
All right.
you know, what difference does it make, you know?
So we started off with asking if there was any hope in the world, and we can finish off by saying, no, there's no hope. We will be on Zoom for the rest of our lives.
Whoa.
At any rate, I think we are getting up around half an hour here, so we'll send you all off to your training and your running and your karate, which is what all four of us are doing, I guarantee.
Great.
Thank you so much for taking some time to hang out. You're all wonderful human beings and wonderful thinkers and wonderful artists. And thanks for spending a little bit of time with me and with us, even if it can't be in person. It's great to see you on the screen. And for anybody who ends up watching this, check out Play on Shakespeare that Louis does down in the States. It's a fascinating project that's done some really interesting things and having some great reach. So look it up, check it out. And if you don't know Kent or Yvette, check them out too. But a lot of our watchers will. So thank you very much, folks. It's lovely to see you digitally. And we'll see you all again in person eventually.
Thanks,
Yes.
Will.
So take care, you guys.
Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
See you.